Hello and welcome to this final installment of Game Master's Play for the Adventures in Middle-earth. This is the review episode where we give it the scores and let you know what we felt about the overall process. We've given you our opinions and our insights into how the game works. You've hopefully watched the actual run-through of the game, and if you haven't, I suggest you go and look at last week's episode, which is the live playthrough, just that it makes a bit more context in terms of what the guy's going to be talking about in today's episode. Now, very briefly, I want to take you through the scorecard. It is quite lengthy. Again, we tried to make sure that the scorecard was as impartial as possible, reducing down the answers to yes or no questions. What this does mean, though, is that things that the scorecard looks for might not be things that you look for. So that's something that's very important to bear in mind. The scorecard is broken up into 5 different sections, and each section has got 5 different categories that need to be answered yes or no. The first section is gameplay. Under gameplay, we have easy-to-understand rules. There's no point in having a role-playing game where the rules are incredibly convoluted or you're paging backwards and forwards to try and understand how things work. Traditionally, older role-playing systems suffered from a problem of this, where you're going, where's that rule? Where's that rule? There was an obscurity to the way that material was presented. This mostly has fallen away, but it could still be an issue. So are the rules easy to understand? Yes or no? Intuitive gameplay. Does it make sense? Do the mechanics seem to be consistent throughout the whole thing? Are the mechanics streamlined? Are the mechanics integrated? Do you have to use completely different mechanics for completely different parts of the game, or is it all one homogeneous whole? From our perspective, a single unified solution is always going to be better than multiple bit parts. And is the system flexible? Could you use this for more than just what it is prescribed? Automatically, this will disadvantage systems that are based around specific settings. Star Trek, Star Wars, the Lord of the Rings settings, for example. Are they going to be able to be used for other systems? Perhaps. So the answer is either a yes or a no. Could you use this for something else? Yes or no. We then look at character creation. Are there lots of options for character creation or limited options? Oftentimes, role-playing games will release supplements that will then add options to this, and as a result, the score might be a no for most people in the first iteration of the game, but once subsequent additions or extra material has been released, that might change to a yes. We are examining the core book. Is the core book solving our problems? In this case, lots of options, yes or no. Clarity of the creation process. Is it a logical flow? Are the chapters in the right order? Do we need to flip backwards and forwards as we're creating characters, or do we just go on a journey? Clarity of advancement paths or options. Some games do not have levels, but there is always a sense of progression. Is there a sense of progression? And if there is it a clear sense of progression that characters and players can aim for? Variety and customization. Can we change up what's presented in the book? Can we mix it together? Can we add in our own stuff? What are our options? And then finally, what are the weapons, equipment, and accessories like? It's always fun to have bling. We want to make sure that the bling is represented and is appropriate for what is in the book. Narrative support. Is the material inspirational? When you look at the book, when you look at what's been included, does it inspire you to tell great stories? Or is it just fairly mechanical and uninspiring? Mechanical robustness, applicability. Can you apply the mechanics to lots of different scenarios? Do you have to have lots of mechanics for lots of different scenarios? How applicable are the base mechanics to most situations, or those kinds of things? What's the latitude for rules applications? There might be a rule for this, but is there a rule for that? If there isn't a rule, is there an overarching rule which could be applied? How many times do we go, oh, there isn't a rule on that, so let's try and figure it out? Freedom of expression is next. Are we able to express the stories we want to within the material, or are we confined? And then finally, does the narrative support, does the material fit with the expectations of the genre. If we're playing Star Trek, we expect starships and going on journeys. If the books don't include or cover that kind of material, well, presentation. This is a very personal section, and it is something that you must decide upon for yourself. Is the layout of the material presented in a nice way? Let's be honest, it might be a great rule system, but if everything is higgledy-piggledy and you gotta go looking for stuff, that's a fail. Artwork and design. Is the artwork something that you want to go back to, or is it something you wish they'd just left out because it's hideous? This happens. Clarity of expression. When they write a paragraph explaining a rule, do you have to sit there with a thesaurus and ponder the meanings of commas, colons and semicolons? Or is it clear? Tone and mood appropriate. Is the setting dark? In which case, are the rules presented in a way that they convey that mood? Or are the rules laid out with little jokes and commentary and quips and things that really break you out of the tone and mood? And then extras. What extra has been added? It might just be a rule book, but are there little quotes from characters? Is there flavor text? Is there something in there that shows that the designers loved what they did rather than manufactured it just for pure hard, cold cash? And then finally we look at supporting material. This category may be a little contentious, but it is something that we have to be very cognizant of. Smaller publishers will struggle here because we look for, is there online support? Can you go and join forums, Discord servers, chat rooms? Is there YouTube videos you can go and watch on this material? How and where do we find any kind of online material for? Is it freely available? Is it easy to find? All of that kind of stuff is very appropriate for today's modern audiences. Are there apps? Can I create my character somewhere? Is there a character generator? Is there a monster generator? All of these kinds of things we need to look at very seriously, because if they're not there, they're going to be flagged. Downloads. Can I download blank character sheets? Are there character sheets online? Downloads are important. Compatibility. This system might be great, but if I can only play it on Tuesdays, if I can only play it in this particular system and it can't go anywhere else, is this really a system for me? Can I change it up? Is there more material out there by independent authors? Is there... where? And then scope. Is this just a once-off printing where there's only the core rulebook and nothing else will ever come out? Or are there thousands of editions, extra books, extra settings, extra rule sets? The more, the better. To a large degree, yes, one doesn't want to invest in a role-playing system that has thousands of books because of the expense. On the other hand, if you only have the core rulebook, this is it, and it will never get better, or you will never have more options. So we think scope should always be bigger. That's the scorecard. If the answer is yes, it scores 1 point. If the answer is no, it scores 0 points. The final total out of 25 is multiplied by 4 and then divided by 10 to give us a round number rounding up. So anything on a 5 or a 0.5 or above rounds up to the highest number. And that will result in the final GMP score for the participating GMs each. Those are combined, divided by the number of players and the GM, and that gives you the grand total. Frequently, there are sections that you might disagree with. You might look at the scorecard and go, no, I think that should have been a yes, or I think that should have been a no. We tried to avoid that as much as possible, and that's why we try to include as many different GMs as we can, so we're getting as broad a spectrum of responses as possible for people who have actually played the game. That's enough of that. That's how GMP works. All of that happens in the background. You don't have to worry about it. Let's jump straight in to the final results from each of the players.
So what did I think of Adventures in Middle-earth? It was fun. It stayed true to the source material. I believe we all had a good time playing it. And it does what it sets out to do. And it gives you the platform to play Tolkien-style adventures and enjoy, having a character, developing a character in the Middle-earth setting.
I'm a big fan of The Lord of the Rings, so I like it. I think the mechanics do a very good job of trying to bridge that gap between normal role-playing and this setting in particular, where this setting is always going to be based around that kind of omnipresent shadow and darkness. And so a lot of those mechanics make sense to me. And also I like the idea of there being a kind of a complicated simplicity, in the sense that it seems to me that there's a little bit more work involved, but the overall concepts are also quite simple.
I'm a Lord of the Rings fan. I love the setups with it. I loved meeting, which hopefully, go watch episode 3, because there will be spoilers, so please go watch episode 3. Here they come. I loved meeting up with Elrond. I liked going on a journey, and then we, are like finding like people lost on the road, and we're helping them out. We like barely snuck around and avoided like a whole horde of orcs and all that stuff. It was a good adventure.
So yeah, I really enjoyed playing The Adventures of Middle-earth. I had a great time. Fantastic.
I think in general this RPG is a very good conversion. It's a very good representation of Tolkien's Middle-earth. If I was someone who wanted to play games within Middle-earth, this for me would be my go-to system of the various offerings of the Middle-earth opportunity, and there have been many of them, relatively speaking, over the course of many decades. It's simple, it's laid out beautifully, it's got all of the mechanics that I'm familiar with from 5th edition, and then some interesting twists on top of that.
Honestly, I was actually surprised at how much I enjoyed this role-playing game. I have honestly never been a fan of The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings, and I was so worried that my lack of understanding of the lore was really going to impact my enjoyment of the game. I was pleasantly surprised to actually find out that it didn't, and there was so much stuff that really helped bridge the gap in my knowledge with the other players who, say, had actually known a lot more than I did. In addition, I actually am more of an action-based player, and I was really worried that with so much emphasis on things like the journey mechanics, as well as the audience mechanics, where you sort of talk to the notable NPCs, that there was just going to be a lot of fluff that was just, bumming around, sort of doing nothing. But I actually found that these mechanics were the most engaging. There was so much stuff that everyone had roles and things to do. Everything from embarking all the way through to arriving with various forms of fatigue really, I think, made it feel as though you were on a journey rather than just simply playing a role-playing game.
Now, as to would I want to play this game again? Yes, in kind of a limited fashion, right? And it has nothing to do with the game itself. It's put together really well. And I believe it actually does what it's meant to do. And that is to play Adventures in Middle-earth, which is a low fantasy, low magic, grittier style play of, compared to some of the other D&D settings out there and other games out there. That is not my preferred play style. I like more action and more pulpiness to it. So it's not something that I would enjoy going back to over and over again. But I do feel like it does what it was set out to do and does it well.
I think that it would work very well in different areas. So you could play in a more long-running campaign, much like the Lord of the Rings books, where you're going on a much more in-depth journey. And I think that you can play that out in a very long... We only played a one-shot, which was fun, but I think that this game really shines in that long journey, in the sense that you're traveling over vast distances in the pursuit of a goal to defeat evil, which I can see myself getting involved in a campaign for that quite easily, because I think that's very attractive to me as a fan.
Overall, I probably won't play it again unless it's with a dungeon master I trust, or like Guy. I would totally play with him again. But I would like some different house rulings on the negatives on the journeys. And it's because I'm also kind of like more like a laid back guy. I like the idea of having more freedom to it. But I tell you what, I feel like the journeys do have, they've got a lot of good parts of it too.
I would definitely want to play The Adventures of Middle-earth again. I found it really enjoyable. I really enjoyed jumping into somebody else's world. I think as GMs, we create our own worlds a lot. I certainly do. Sure, obviously. So, yeah, playing within somebody else's setting, and a setting that is very well known, was interesting. It was a little bit daunting, particularly knowing that other players at the table have more Tolkien lore at their fingertips than I do, perhaps. But yeah, I would definitely play it again, and I'd definitely put it on my table.
I would definitely like to play this RPG again. I would like to explore the mechanics that they have put in terms of journeys and fellowships. I would like to see how that feels in terms of pacing. One-shots are often not long enough necessarily to get a full scope of the game. We understood some basic mechanics, but now we want to see how that expresses itself as a campaign. There is so much material here that you could literally play in this world for years without any doubt. I would also like to spend some time tinkering with the RPG to see if it could be extracted from the Middle-earth setting and just simply used as a gritty medieval kind of setting. And I think it could do that very, very well.
I would absolutely play this game again, and if I were, I definitely want to play more than one game. The thing was, I think because of so much towards the journey and traveling around this very vast and deep and rich landscape, you don't want to just rush it into one game. You want to play a couple of games where you get to really feel the world, you know, really get inspired by the actions around you.
Overall, Adventures in Middle-earth is a great game. It's a lot of fun. It does what it's meant to do. If you just want to play gritty, low magic games, use this setting and you can kind of strip away all the tokenisms and make it your own. Or you could just straight up have a good time romping around Middle-earth. So I would recommend this game for people that are looking for those kind of play styles, for that kind of game. I think it does the job really well.
As an interpretation of The Lord of the Rings and Middle-earth as an RPG, this is probably one of the best, or I would say the best, because of the way that it's tried to set up all these different ideas about the ages and the characters and the very detailed sort of descriptions and thoughts about all these different ideas. But I also think that it is trying very hard to encapsulate that sort of feel. And I think that this RPG definitely tries to make that work, and is more successful at it than you might realise. I certainly came away from the game that we played in the one-shot feeling like, that was really kind of, my character died, and it was sad, and, we got to fight against the shadow. We won. We completed our mission, but it was still kind of sad. And I think that theme is very true to the setting. I think it's not necessarily a light-hearted setting in that way. So I think this RPG and the system is successful in that. And I think that because of that, this is a winner for me anyway. Because
I really enjoy the Lord of the Rings lore within this book. I really enjoy the passion that's put behind it. I really love the unique classes and the character creation process. I think the enemies are fun to fight, but I think the biggest thing that puts me off from being like a solid 10 out of 10, it's the journeys, which a lot of it is unique, but the journey itself is it's a little too harsh for me. And I feel like it makes me slow down on the type of combat I want to get into and the type of role play I want to get into. Please, go give it a try. Go support Cubicle 7. They have so many other different books that we haven't even touched on, that I was shocked on, that they have like all these different books and all these different stories and different places that you can go explore. And hell, like I said before, I would totally play this again, just doing some minor tweaks. I would do some minor tweaks in homebrew on the journeys. But other than that, like there are fun stuff to do.
So overall, I would say that the Adventures of Middle-earth is a winner. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed reading the books. I felt like they really wove the lore in a very intelligent way to create this very sort of tangible sense that you are in Tolkien's world, that you are walking in the pages of these great heroes. So yeah, if you're looking for a D&D 5e conversion of Lord of the Rings, look no further. This is the place. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to putting it on my own table, and I'm looking forward to extracting a lot of the concepts to put in my homebrew days as well. So yeah, I would recommend it. Give it a try.
I think when it comes to looking at setting in system or systems for settings, let's put it that way, you look at things like Star Wars, you look at things like Star Trek, Middle-earth, Harry Potter. You look at the setting and you go, what system works best? And by combining 5th edition with new rules, with their own custom rule sets for certain things, I think Cubicle 7 has done a phenomenal job in bringing this together, in making sure that, yes, here is a system that's fairly robust. At the same time, it's accessible to a wide audience, and we are now adding in mechanics and flavoring to make it really work for us. And that, I think, is something that it takes some finessing. And I've seen it done with other settings where it really did not work, where the mechanics become too heavy, they become too much, and you end up doing mechanics rather than playing the game. I think Adventures in Middle-earth has got the balance right in terms of we've got mechanics. These mechanics are supporting what the setting is about. Have a look and use them. When I first saw the mechanics, I was a little bit intimidated. I was like, oh, it looks like table upon table upon table. But once we started using them, I realized that the GM actually can use those tables as narrative devices rather than as simply mechanical outcomes. And I think that makes it a stronger game. So dig a little bit deeper into this one, and I think you'll find that there is a great opportunity for roleplay in a setting that a lot of people love. And if you're a Middle-earth fan, you can't go wrong with this one.
I absolutely think this game is a winner. At the very, very least, I think every role player who enjoys fantasy games should play this game at least once. It has a very unique aspect on overland travel, and it's something that I think everyone can start appreciating how much more emphasis a journey can be when looking at your next quest. It's not just about going from point A to point B, but the travel in between, the bonds you share, and the emotions that you explore as you begin to divulge into this quest that you undergo, I think is just a unique experience that everyone should have. In addition, I think the shadow stuff, fantastic. Why is it that alignment forces us to roleplay a particular way? Why can't an influence be pulling us towards the dark side? Mwah. Play through Lord of the Rings, and I guess you'll find out.
Well, there you go. Those are the final comments from myself and my wonderful players who joined me. I need to thank each and every single one of them for taking the time to read through the rule books, to absorb, to create characters, and then to join me on that crazy, crazy mission. And as you can see, the riddles, hit or miss. But I felt that they were appropriate to the genre and the setting for Adventures in Middle-earth. The grand total score for Adventures in Middle-earth is, I think, reliant on the fact that you have to actually like Adventures in Middle-earth, and even someone who didn't like Adventures in Middle-earth was forced to give it a fairly respectable score. When you combine all of the scores of all of the participants in today's review, Adventures in Middle-earth scores an impressive 8. That makes it a very robust role-playing system. When we return next month, hopefully, with your support and with the support of the publishers, we start to look at different systems moving very far away from 5th edition. Will they be able to stand on their own merits, or will they have to fall back on an established system like Dungeons & Dragons? Who knows? Find out next month when we return with Game Masters Play. We only know if you like this or not by your comments or your likes or your dislikes for that matter. So please leave your comments below. If you've played Adventures in Middle-earth, give it your own rating, give it your own score if you like. You can find the scorecard on our website. That's www.greatgamemaster.com. Find the score sheet, write in your own scores, and let's compare. Do you perhaps have a different opinion on the Adventures in Middle-earth? Leave your comments on what you think about Game Master's Play, if we can improve it, how we can improve it. I've already had some ideas based off of this very first show that we've done, but we would love to hear from you. Is this something that we should continue, or is this something that perhaps the channel shouldn't do? It's, after all, about making your gaming experience better, and if we can't do that through the material we produce, well, what's the point? Until next time, however, I wish you and yours the very happiest of adventuring in Middle-earth.